Meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. This is Ken Shoulders number 27, and we're going to be going through another chapter in this most awesome book called Quest for Zero Point Engineering Principles for Free Energy by Moray King. And I'm just going to read a couple sections that I picked out, and then we're going to jump into one of the chapters, and I'm going to read part of it, and Brendan's going to read part of it. So we'll start here. I'm just going to read the highlighted stuff. Uh, so um, Jin Fox of 1996, Characteristics of High Density Charge Clusters, a Theoretical Model. Um, a mathematical model of charge clusters, Shoulders EVs, is presented that shows the stability is due to helical vortex ring processing and
Possessing,
extraordinary
possessing.
possessing an extraordinary colloidal circulation. And what colloidal circulation is it twists around the toroid. So basically, it's when charge clusters of those rings within rings, those ones that are twisting around can be considered the colloidal circulation. In this relativistic circulation, the colloidal filament, which is the thing that spins around, would have to be thin. A spherical electron cluster is unstable and would tend to form into a toroid by a force balance relationship. The calculation shows that the energy densities of the colloidal filament in a charge cluster is 100 times higher than in a supernova explosion. And Brendan, that's quite the statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. So the other one, and we're going to go through this patent. We just haven't done it yet, but it's part of the plan. Number 27 is Ken Shoulders energy conversion using high density
High
charge,
charged, high
using,
charged
yeah,
density.
using high density charge, sorry, using high charge density, fundamental discovery of how to launch a micro-size negatively charged plasmoid, and that's the important part, called electrovalidium, or EV, which is also known as a charge cluster, or EVO, exotic vacuum object. The EV yields an excess energy over unity gain whenever it hits the anode or travels down the axis of a hollow coil. The excess energy comes from the 0 point, or ZPE, 0 point energy. And then the next ones that I've highlighted before we jump into the chapters is again number 25. Well, basically, that's just, we just read that in the other one, and the one below it. Um, these are different chapters, so sometimes things are repeated. Number 27, mathematical analysis of Shoulders EV that includes a significant vacuum polarization displacement current term, since the EV formation time is of the same order as the plasma frequency period. The resulting nonlinear Klein-Gordon equation contains velocity, vor-
Vorticity.
vorticity terms, and a term similar to quantum mechanical potential, which compensates for the repulsion. The system is solved by numerical methods for a stable uh, localized wave solution, which matches the EV in size and charge density. And then the last one is actually one of the papers that we recently went through, and I think is probably one of the best papers by Shoulders. Permitative, permitativity,
Permittivity.
permittivity,
Permittivity.
yeah, transitions. Observations from electrovalidium experiments include coupled EV pairs traveling in a double helix. Positive EVs that exhibit a charge to mass ratio like the positron, and black invisible EVs which do not manifest any interactions until they are stimulated. Shoulders suggests the EV modifies the permittivity of space to create self-stability. And I think that is maybe like one of the most important statements we could ever read right there. Shoulders suggest that the EV modifies the permittivity of space to create self-stability. And we know that the more that you spin them up, the more stable they become. So that is a thing. So now the next one is on, and this one I just wanted to kind of bring up because of, well, two things. One of them is Cozy Rev, possibilities. This is Cozy Rev, possibility of experimental study of the properties of time. And Cozy Rev is absolutely worth digging into, you guys. And then, of course, the one below it is Paul Laviolette, 1985, An Introduction to Subquantum Kinetics. And then Subquantum Kinetics, Exploring the Crack in the First Law. And I have a question that maybe we could ask of Moray. I wonder if he actually knew Paul personally. Um, good question, right? Maybe we can get that answered in the future, because I think he might have actually, by some of the reading that I've done. So now we're going to go into the chapter on fundamentals of zero-point energy technology. It was originally written in May of 1993 and updated in 1995. And Brendan's going to read through a whole bunch of this, and then I'll finish up at the end.
I'll read through this, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Eddie.
Yeah.
The fundamentals of zero-point energy technology. May 1993, updated 1995. Abstract. The vacuum polarization of atomic nuclei may trigger a coherence in the zero-point energy whenever a large number of nuclei undergo abrupt synchronous motion. Experimental evidence arises from the energy anomalies observed in heavy ion collisions. Ion acoustic plasma oscillations, sonoluminescence, fractal emission, large charge density plasmoids, abrupt electric discharges, and light water cold fusion experiments. Further evidence arises from inventions that utilize coherent coherent ion acoustic activity to output anomalously excessive power. A zero-point energy coherence sufficient to manifest a gravitational anomaly might occur from circulating charged plasma through a helical vortex ring. Abruptly pulsed opposing electromagnetic fields may further augment any zero-point energy interaction. Introduction. Modern physics views the vacuum of empty space not as a void, but as a plenum of randomly fluctuating electromagnetic fields, known as zero-point energy. These vacuum fluctuations persist at 0 degrees Kelvin, and many physicists have shown they possess an enormous energy density. For example, Wheeler, 1962, derives a density of 10 to the 94 grams per centimeter cubed for individual fluctuations on the scale of a Planck length, 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. The energy is not readily noticed at classical level, since the fluctuations are ubiquitous, and a standard radiation detector requires an energy difference to make a measurement. Nonetheless, there is a point of view well represented in the physics literature that shows that zero-point energy is the basis of the material world. Boyer, Boyer, 1975, shows how the black body. Let me just make this a little bit larger.
Mm-hmm.
Boyer 19. So that's Boyer 1975 shows how the black body radiation spectrum, as well as other quantum events, is attributed to the zero-point energy. Steninsky, 1973, has suggested that the elementary particle's very existence is intertwined with the zero-point energy. Puthoff, 1987, has shown the hydrogen atom stability is due to zero-point energy interaction, which prevents the electron from collapsing into the nucleus. Puthoff, 1989, has also shown how gravity can be derived from action of the zero-point energy, and recently Hayes, Ruder, and Puthoff, 1994, have shown that the zero-point energy could be the basis of inertia as well. There have also been proposed zero-point energy models for the photon. Scully, Honig, 1986, and the electron, Jennison, 1978. The zero-point energy might well be the primary underpinning of all physics.
Which it is.
Can the zero-point energy be tapped as an energy source? At first, this idea seems to be a blatant violation of the conservation of energy. But if the zero-point energy is physically real, then there is energy available, and its conversion and its conservation would not be the issue. The real issue centers on the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy. But how could a system based on chaotic energy fluctuations evolve into coherence? Prigogine, 1977, won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for showing how a system can evolve from chaos into order. The system must exhibit three characteristics. It must be nonlinear, far from equilibrium, and have an energy flux through it. To review King, 1991, of the published theories of the zero-point energy, show that under certain circumstances, zero-point energy in its nonlinear interaction with matter can be influenced to fulfill these conditions. And this suggests the possibility that it might be available as an energy source. King, 1989. For example, Boyer, 1976, has mathematically shown that a system consisting of a nonlinear dipole can absorb energy from particular modes of the zero-point energy spectrum. Also, Cole and Puthoff, 1993, published a proof showing that, in principle, the zero-point energy can be tapped as an energy source without violating thermodynamics. As chaos theory and system theory are applied to the zero-point energy, new models of matter, fields, and space-time arise, e.g. Laviolette, 1985, and Winterberg, 1990.
Awesome.
Combining the theories of system self-organization, e.g. Suzaki, 1984 et al., with the theories of zero-point energy, open the possibility for a new energy source. Experiments. Despite the intriguing possibilities offered by the system theory, it will require an experiment to prove that the zero-point energy can be tapped as an energy source. A first-order experimental success has already been accepted by the physics community. Forward, 1984, has invented a rather simple battery based on the Casimir effect. Maloney et al., 1988. Casimir predicted and experimentally demonstrated that the 0-point fluctuations induced a 1 over d to the power 4, d equals distance, attraction between two parallel conductive plates. Ford's battery utilizes charged foils whose spacing is so close that the 1 over d to the power 4 attraction overcomes the 1 over d to the squared Coulomb repulsion and results in a direct current output of power from the 0-point energy. Even though the device may not currently be practical, its primary value is that it proves the principle that the 0-point energy can be tapped as an energy source. Puthoff, 1990. Puthoff, 1990, also applies the same Casimir squeeze principle to explain the surprising stability of high charge density electron beads discovered by Shoulders, 1991, called electrum validium. These beads are on the order of a micron in size and exhibit a net charge of approximately 10 to the 11 electrons. They are stable when guided through etched channels in a dielectric substrate and can travel at 1/10 the speed of light. They can induce an excessively powerful electrical pulse on a nearby serpentine conductor or surrounding helical conductor as they rapidly speed by in parallel to it. When they strike the anode plate, they also discharge a powerful pulse. Shoulders states that the output energy of the pulses greatly exceeds the input energy needed to create them, and the source appears to be from the 0-point energy. Electrum validium appears to be a self-organized structure akin to ball lightning, Stinger, 1971 et al., or the toroidal plasmoids produced by Bostic, 1957. Could the anomalous persistence of ball lightning be associated with the 0-point energy coherence as well? Egley, 1986, Jennison, 1990. How plasmas could cohere the 0-point energy can be understood from examining the vacuum polarization description of the constituent particles. Rorschach, 1968. Quantum electrodynamics shows that the quantum polarization of electrons is quite different than atomic nuclei. Scheck, 1983. Reinhardt et al. 1980. Electrons, especially when bound in matter, exhibit a random cloud-like interaction with the quantum fluctuations and are effectively in thermodynamic equilibrium with it. On the other hand, nuclei exhibit stable, orderly lines of vacuum polarization, which converge radially onto the particle. This allows them to launch and respond to local vacuum polarization displacement currents, which conduction band electrons may not be able to detect. The abrupt motion of nuclei can locally drive the 0-point energy far from equilibrium, and when combined with the nonlinear dynamics of both the plasma and 0-point energy, can fulfill Prigoghine's conditions for system self-organization to trigger the formation of exotic energetic vacuum states, similar to those that sometimes occur in heavy ion collision experiments. Salinza, 1986 et al. Evidence for the 0-point energy coherence in plasmas arises from the observed anomalies associated with the ion acoustic mode, where the plasma's ions are undergoing synchronous oscillations. Here is observed runaway electrons, Kiwamoto et al. 1979. Anomalous heating, Sethian 1978 et al. And high-frequency voltage spikes, Kalinin 1970 et al. In general, plasma physicists have not been looking for energy anomalies in their experiments, but recently Chernetsky, Samarkin 1990 has claimed to produce more heat output in his plasma experiments than energy input, and attributes the 0-point energy as the source of excess energy. Another class of experiments yielding anomalous heat are the cold fusion experiments, of which there have recently been numerous successes. Storms 1990. These experiments can manifest ion acoustic type oscillations of the deuterons within the hydride lattice sites, especially under the conditions of deuterium supersaturation, where all the sites are occupied and diffusion is inhibited. Here, within a single crystalline grain of the hydride, the deuterons may undergo coherent oscillation, creating a macroscopic 0-point energy vacuum polarization. If the 0-point energy is coherently interacting with the system, then it can trigger some fusion events, Andor 1990, as well as produce abundant heat without fusion. Especially relevant are the experiments of Mills and Kainzais 1991, who can generate anomalous heat with 100% repeatability in their light water experiments. And there has been reported numerous independent replications. Malov 1992 et al. Also Dorfor 1993 has created a simple experiment involving just sparking in hydrogen with a stainless steel electrode, which produces excess heat with 100% repeatability. Pappas 1991 likewise claims excessive energy from sparking. Recently, Mizuno et al. 1993 have investigated proton conductors and claim their experiment outputs 70,000 times more heat than accounted for by the input power. The 0-point energy just might be the source of the anomalous energy in experiments where nuclei motion is involved. Another experimental area where energy anomalies could be associated with coherent ion motion occurs in sonoluminescence, Walton and Reynolds, 1984. Here, ultrasonic excitation of water causes emission of blue light that is visible to the naked eye. It has previously been assumed that the collapse of cavitation bubbles produces a sufficiently abrupt heating that it can dissociate some water molecules into a plasma, followed by chemiluminescence of its constituents. However, the recent research of Barber and Potterman, 1991, have shown that the photon emissions are much too rapid for the fastest atomic electron transitions. Moreover, they show that the phenomena represents a 10 to the 11 amplification of energy. Nobel laureate Schwinger 1993 has proposed a zero-point energy interaction to explain the source of energy in solar luminescence. Along similar lines, coherent nuclei coupling in the zero-point energy could be suggested to explain the anomalies associated with fractal emission. Preparator 1991. The abrupt fracturing of crystals has yielded anomalously powerful light emissions as well as excessively accelerated electrons. Furthermore, the anomalous events could persist for hours. Preparator 1991 has proposed a theory of superradiance, where coherent radiation from a plasma produced around the fracture of synchronous is synchronous with the plasma oscillations and creates an excited standing wave bound state within the fracture cavity.
Standing wave's really important there.
Preparator's model has the zero-point energy coherently interacting with plasma ion acoustic oscillations that can manifest an energy concentration which produces the anomalously powerful events. The proposed zero-point energy coherence exhibits stability similar to ball lightning, or Schrödinger's 1991 electron validium, and appears to explain the event's anomalous persistence. Inventions. Evidence for tapping the zero-point energy as an energy source also comes from inventions whose principle of operation involves the same ion acoustic type activity that exhibits energy anomalies in experiments. For example, in the 1930s, Moray, 1978, produced a solid-state device that was well witnessed to output 50 kilowatts of electricity. Moray stressed that the basis of success was maintaining ion oscillations in the plasmas within the device's tubes. Along similar lines, Brown, 1989, has reproduced a resonant nuclear battery that is similar to the source, Krypton 1985. To maintain the plasma, which couples to a tuned circuit and outputs 5 watts. The one Curie radioactive source could only output power at best, assuming 100% efficiency in converting its mass to energy on the order of 5 milliwatts. However, if the tuned circuit resonates at the plasma's ion acoustic frequency, and this mode couples coherently with the zero-point energy, it could explain the source of anomalous power. The zero-point energy ion acoustic hypothesis may be applied to explain anomalous energy production in the water dissociation inventions of Pugart 1981 and Meyer 1991. Both inventions excite water in specially shaped vessels with large voltage pulses designed to resonate the water molecules at the frequency of the hydrogen-oxygen electron bonds. Pugart stresses the importance of triggering an acoustic resonance within the water molecule itself, and both inventors claim to require far less input energy to accomplish the dissociation than what is returned when the hydrogen is burned as fuel. This work is reminiscent of Keely's research, Moore, 1971, who claimed to easily dissociate water when excited at the appropriately resonant ultrasonic frequencies. Davison 1990 reports of an anomalously violent event when a column of water adjusted to support acoustical standing waves was driven with a barium titanate ultrasonic transducer at the water dissociation frequency identified by Keely, approximately 43 kilohertz. If the synchronous motions of the nuclei comprising the water molecules induce a coherence in the 0-point energy, the anomalous energy produced in the resonant dissociation of water could be explained. So it's tapping it. See the frequency that the water's been resonated at taps into the 0-point.
Mm-hmm.
Draws energy from the 0-point to break the water molecule bond, I suppose. Another invention, so it draws extra energy from the 0-point than the energy input to break the water molecule bond. Draws extra energy from the 0-point. Another invention where resonant ionic motion may be launching anomalous energy is the battery pulsing circuit originally discovered by Bedini, 1991, and investigated by Panassi, 1992. If a new lead acid battery,
a new lead acid
is pulse charged by a fast rise time square wave, unipolar positive, above 20 volts, 50% duty cycle, and on the order of 300 to 400 hertz. Anomalous power can sometimes be generated that seems to be related to the critical timing in the arrival of the pulse edges. Most surprising claim regarding this experiment is the production of cold current, where appreciable output power, 20 watts, can be guided along thin wires, number 28, without heating them. The effect works only on new lead acid batteries. A battery that has been discharged and recharged by a standard DC battery charger will not produce it. The anomalous behavior could be explained as follows. The battery plates consist of
porous
lead or lead peroxide, which exhibit a delicate dendritic structure, much like the description of the palladium surface in the theories of electrochemistry. Storms, 1991, Clark, 1993. During both the charge and discharge reactions, protons, hydrogen ions, form on the dendritic surface within the porous plates. The intense electric fields from the sharp pointed dendrites can accelerate the protons, and when stimulated by an appropriate pulsed excitation, the protons can undergo coherent synchronous oscillations similar to those described for the cold fusion experiments. The oscillations may be resonant at a higher frequency than the square wave excitation, but by adjusting the square wave to be an exact subharmonic, the pulse edges can arrive in phase with the resonance. Discharging the battery accumulates sulfate on the porous plates, and recharging it with DC direct current ruins the original dendritic surface. Barak, 1980. Thus, a new battery must be used for this experiment. The surprising cold current effect has been associated with other inventions, e.g. Morey in 1978, Morey 1978 demonstrated it and used number 30 wire within his 50 kilowatt device. It might be explained by the hypothesis that the coupling of synchronous ion oscillations with the zero-point energy can manifest macroscopic vacuum polarization displacement currents, King 1984, which can surround the conductive wire and be guided by it. Conduction band electrons lacking stable radially convergent vacuum polarization lines have a minimal interaction with these displacement currents, and the wires remain cool. If engineers could replicate this effect, zero-point energy research would receive widespread interest. Another area where coherent ion motion is associated with energy anomalies involves abrupt electrical discharges. Granu, 1985, has experimentally demonstrated that an anomalous force is associated with a large abrupt electrical discharge in water. He observed a threshold effect where the same amount of energy is discharged from a capacitor bank into a water vessel, but with different rise times. At slow rise times, no motion is observed, but at a threshold where the pulse becomes abrupt enough, the water exhibits an explosive expansion. Johnson, 1992, surmises from his experiments that the force is related to current density. Along similar lines, the engines of Gray, 1976, and Papp, 1984, utilize abrupt electrical discharges to produce an anomalous driving force as well as excessive output power. The hypothesis of coherent ion motion coupling to the zero-point energy seems to likewise fit these inventions. Pappas, 1991, has proposed from his derivation of the Ampere's law that a powerful enough electric discharge where the electron velocities exceed 70% of the speed of light can produce anomalous energy when the discharge strikes the anode plate. An alternative similar hypothesis is that the powerful discharge hitting an anode can produce a plasma ionic surge that, if coupled coherently with the zero-point energy, would manifest a greater voltage spike than would be otherwise predicted by classical theory. Many other inventors have also claimed that the anomalous energy production in their devices takes the form of abrupt voltage spikes, and that they would have a practical device if only they could efficiently convert this form of energy. Hyde, 1990, was faced with a similar problem of absorbing large voltage pulses produced in his invention. He solved the problem and created an advanced embodiment which produced over 20 kilowatts of net output power while free running. Hyde designed a solid-state voltage divider that takes advantage of the abrupt rise time of the incident pulses. and it is disclosed in his patent. The voltage divider circuit diagrammed in the patent figure 1 here has been questioned by electrical engineers since the line herein labeled L1, so it's this one down here, this circuit here.
Yep.
Hyde's voltage divider circuit, US patent number 4897592, figure 6. The voltage divider circuit diagrammed in the patent figure 1 that I just showed has been questioned by electrical engineers since the line herein labeled L1 connecting the positive sides of the capacitors labeled 100, 86 and 106, as well as the line herein labeled L2 connecting the negative sides of these capacitors, thus connecting them in parallel, essentially short out the series connections provided by the diodes 108 104. If the diagram is analyzed as a lump circuit, the diodes 108 104 would always be back biased and appear like open switches, and the circuit could be viewed when the capacitors are combined as equivalent to a standard rectifier. Thus, when analyzed as a lumped circuit, the diagram circuit appears unable to provide large voltage division. However, analyzing the diagram as a distributed circuit or transmission line suggests that it could produce voltage division of sharp pulses propagating through the circuit. To accomplish voltage division with concomitant current multiplication, the capacitors must be charged in series and then discharged in parallel. If the electrical lines L1 and L2 are made considerably longer than the series path through the capacitors, 100, 86 and 106, then their residual line inductance would result in a higher surge impedance to sharp voltage pulses and tend to channel the pulses through the lower impedance series path. If necessary, the inductance of L1 and L2 can be increased by shaping the wires into loose coils or by adding ferrite loading around the wires. Hyde developed the circuit empirically as he was attempting to control and absorb the very large and sharp voltage pulses generated in his device. The sharp pulses take the series path to charge the capacitors, and then the energy is discharged smoothly through the parallel path. Only by analyzing the diagram as a distributed circuit can its voltage division action be understood. Note the diagram below. Note the diagram shows only a 3-stage illustration of a voltage division transmission line for sharp pulses. Clearly, more stages can be used if further voltage division current amplification is needed. Hyde's circuit may be of value to inventors whose devices produce high voltage spikes from ion acoustic activity. It might facilitate a very straightforward solid state method for tapping the 0-point energy. A solid state method for cohering the 0-point energy might be achieved by inducing appropriate nuclei motion within materials that exhibit strong electrical and acoustical coupling. For example, the following means of electrical excitation can stimulate acoustical spinor waves in a highly polarizable dielectric, such as barium titanate. Exciter electrodes are mounted, as shown in Figure 2, on a cylinder of barium titanate 45 degrees from the axis of maximum polarization. The electrode pairs A1, A2, and B1, B2 are alternately excited by the oscillating unipolar waveform, which causes the polarization vector to flex between the A and B directions. The oscillating polarization impresses an oscillating torque on the dielectric lattice, which twists it to produce synchronous cycloidal movement of the lattice nuclei. At the appropriate distance along the cylinder above the first electrode group, or polarization layer, is another set of electrodes whose voltage is timed to drive the polarization vector in the opposite phase, i.e., when the first layer is polarized in the A direction, the next layer should be polarized in the B direction, and vice versa. In like fashion, more layers of alternating excitation electrodes can be mounted along the cylinder. The optimal distance between the layers will be related to the wavelength of the acoustical excitation, whose drive frequency should be chosen to maximize the amplitude of the acoustical activity. The back and forth twisting action of the lattice can excite and maintain two counter-rotating acoustical spinor waves. If there is a direct coupling of the synchronous nuclei motion to the zero-point energy, there could then arise dual counter-rotating displacement current vortices driven by spatial coherent dynamic vacuum polarization. Such dual vortices would be a macroscopic formation analogous to virtual particle pair production. Quantum electrodynamics requires that any form arising from the zero-point energy be created in opposing pairs in order to conserve charge momentum and spin, angular momentum. If instead of a linear cylinder, the dielectric is shaped as a toroid, the dual spinor waves can close into standing waves, and a significant zero-point energy coherence might thus be induced within a solid-state structure. In a similar fashion, acoustical spinor waves can be created within a highly permeable magnetic material, such as barium ferrite, by using an equivalent magnetic field excitation in place of the electrodes. The oscillating magnetic vectors of the shifting domains couple to the ferrite lattice and elastically twist it back and forth. See Plaque, 1980. Experimental evidence that such activity could cohere the zero-point energy appears to be exhibited by the energy-producing invention of Sweet, 1991.
Awesome. Thanks, Brendan, for reading all through that. And the last thing there, they're talking about Sweet's invention, which is the VTA vacuum triode amplifier, I think is what it's called. Won't be next Sunday, but the Sunday after that, there's a whole chapter on that, and we're going to go through that, which is really exciting. So I'll carry on. Vortices and precession. The greatest zero-point energy coherence may arise in experiments creating a vortex or precessional flow of charged fluid or plasma. Schellberger Anderson, 1990, did a series of experiments circulating water in specially spiraled pipes. At certain vorticities, the fluid flow manifested,
Velocities.
at certain velocities, the fluid flow manifested negative resistance, and that's very important, i.e., energy creation, as well as a strange bluish glow appearing in the water near the bottom of the vortex. Such a glow is reminiscent of solar luminescence, discussed previously, as Cernetsky, um,
Samakian.
Samakian, 1990, observed that the greatest output of anomalous energy in his plasma experiment was associated with a cycloid motion of the plasma particles. Such spiraling plasma particle motion is also the key operating point for the energy invention by Spence, 1988, the theoretical research by Reed, 1992, Jensen, 78, and Winter, 91, suggests a golden mean logarithmic spiral is the three-space projection of a fundamental hyperspatial flow of an ether or zero-point flux. Systems whose dynamics align with this flow tap the zero-point energy. An aligned interaction with the zero-point flux may alter local gravity, Lithwaite, Davidson, 1989, observed in his experiments with a gyroscope displaced along a particular spiral path while precessing would manifest a gravitational and inertial anomaly. Puthoff, 89, suggests that the gravity is derived from the action of the zero-point energy. This view is essentially supported by general relativity, since the zero-point energy must be part of the stress energy tensor which curves the space-time metric. If a system induces coherence in the zero-point energy, a gravitational anomaly or a change in the local pace of time could manifest, from Kozyrev, 1968. Precessional motion may be the method to manifest the largest zero-point energy coherence. De Palma, 1973, observed a direct gravitational and inertial anomaly in his experiments involving forced precession of a counter rotating pair of gyroscopes. Schellberger used twisted pipes of an egg-shaped oval cross-section, which is kind of important. I didn't really know that until I read this, to induce an internal spin so that the spiral pipe...
It's induced an inner spin.
An inner spin, so that the spiral pipe formation would cause precessional motion in the water flow. A natural form to induce precessional flow is a helix tube closed to form a vortex ring. This shape was observed in the plasmoids of Bostich, 1957, as well as that suggested for ball lightning, Johnson, 1965. Rodin's 1992 theoretic thesis featuring a precisely shaped spiral circulating polyidally around a toroid. Medvedev had the vortex ring as the basis for the elementary particles. Honig, 1986, used it to model the proton, and Winterberg, 1990, has it as the basis for the unified field theory. Childress, which is David Childress, 1991, describes the Vimanas, ancient flying ships reported in the Hindu Veda texts, which had a propulsion system based on circulating mercury through a vortex ring. A surprisingly large gravitational anomaly might be created by rapidly pumping positively charged fluid or plasma through a vortex ring piping system. Such an experiment might well be robust and repeatably and
Repeat
repeat
reliably.
liability for all investigators. Another method for cohering the zero point energy involves abruptly bucking, and bucking is when it goes back and forth, abruptly bucking electromagnetic fields. When EM fields are in perfect opposition, the field vectors exactly cancel each other, creating a zero resultance. However, there still exists a stress in the fabric of space, and it manifests as a scalar EM potential. Arnon
Aronov and Bohm.
and Bohm have shown that the EM potential affects the phase of the quantum mechanical wave function associated with the elementary particles. Bearden, 1986, has emphasized that the resultant stress is actually a coherence in the zero point energy and can propagate as scalar waves. King, 1986, has suggested a hyperspatial model for such a coherence involving vortex rings. The model is based on geometrodynamics, Wheeler 1996. And that's something that I actually showed you guys when I showed you guys the initial charge clusters. I'll show that to you again at some point, where the zero point energy manifests an electrical flux flowing orthogonally to our three space, and orthogonally is at 90 degrees. Abruptly opposing EM field transitions pinch and release this flux, which tend to guide or ortho-rotate some of the flow into our three space. Timing is critical. The quicker and more abrupt the opposing EM field transitions, the greater the flux ortho-rotation. An experiment to demonstrate the effect of abruptly bucking electromagnetic fields involves the use of caduceus coil, Smith 1964. The caduceus coil has two windings of opposite helix or helicity, crisscrossing like the snake on the
caduceus
shaft. Perfect symmetry is important for the coils are driven simultaneously by abrupt electrical pulses. As they propagate up both windings, the pulse edges must remain perfectly aligned to maintain the bucking field action. The sharper the rise time of the aligned pulse edges, the greater the effect. The coil would be wound on a hollow tube in order to facilitate experiments with a variety of core materials. Burridge 79 describes the use of ferrite coils, and Van Tassel Dollard experimented with quartz crystal coils, and that's kind of important, that one, quartz crystal coils.
Cores.
Quartz crystal coils.
Cores, Eddie, cores, not coils, cores.
Yeah, quartz crystal cores, sorry, not coils. Quartz crystal coils, or cores, which go inside. A synergetic zero-point coherence might well be induced by having the core be comprised of any of the previously suggested apparatus for cohering the zero-point energy. For example, a long plasma tube excited at its ion acoustic resonance, or a tube in which there occurs a plasma vortex or other plasmoids, such as produced by Shoulders 91, Mayer 89, achieved considerable success by combining many ideas, and a pulse caduceus coil excitation may well augment any device that is cohering the zero-point energy. Summary. For the concentrated vacuum polarization of atomic nuclei arises the possibility of triggering a macroscopic zero-point coherence in the synchronization motion of many nuclei.
Synchronous. Synchronous.
Syn synchronous motion of many nuclei. Experimental evidence arises from energy anomalies associated with heavy ion collisions, plasma ion acoustic oscillations, sonoluminescence, fractal emissions, which is probably one of the more important ones, large charge density plasmoid ball lightning, abrupt energy discharges, and light water cold fusion experiments. Further supporting evidence arises from inventions that utilize coherent motions and output excessive energy. The sharp voltage spikes that arise from ion acoustic activity can be converted by use of circuits such as Hyde's voltage divider. Large effects might be produced by solid-state methods that manifest dual counter-rotating acoustic lattice spinor waves, in which is actually Sweet's device he's talking about. Processing charged plasma or fluid by pumping it through a helical vortex ring might produce a sufficient zero-point energy coherence to manifest a gravitational anomaly. Abruptly bucking electromagnetic fields, which again are bucking is when it goes back and forth from a pulse caduceus coil, could further stimulate a coherent zero-point interaction with whatever is placed within its core. If synchronous ion acoustic activity coheres the zero-point energy, there well may be many more inventions forthcoming, and a new energy source will be recognized. And I think that synchronous ion acoustic that causes the coherence is pretty important part of it all. So yeah, so that's today's reading. Does anybody want to add any comments or?
I was just wondering how when he was mentioning Maya, when he passes using when he's stimulating water as electrolysis.
Mhm.
I'm sensing that I was sensing that he was saying that because Maya breaks the water into oxygen and hydrogen very easily. So it may be using zero point energy, drawing on the zero point energy to break the bond. That bond is a lot of energy. So when he burns it again, he gets more power out because the zero point may be tapping into this. It may be this resonant frequency of the water molecule bond, may be tapping into the zero point. The zero point is breaking the bond with a lot of energy.
I
Then
think
when
he
he
said
burns,
it was 43 kilohertz was the frequency. But yeah,
yeah.
I mean
So,
that
so,
is
so,
the
so, so, so it's a certain frequency. Maybe it's a certain frequency, but a certain resonant frequency of the water molecule bond that taps into the zero point, that draws on the zero point. So
I
instead of spending all that energy breaking the bond, he's just using a little bit of energy to
yep.
break the bond. And then you've got all that energy left over. When you burn it, you get lots of energy out. Anyway, so
Yeah, I'd suggest that that's part of the key is the frequencies. Uh, if everyone wants to watch my channel, there's a thing on there from Dr. James Schwartz who has a working free energy generator, the power flux power generator it's called, and he's basically doing the same thing there essentially because he told me that he uses 5 frequencies, and he said that what's really the key to all this is knowing the frequencies, and of course having the frequencies proper, then we can create the standing wave, and that's the most important part is creating the standing wave, and you can't do that without knowing the frequencies and stuff, right? It all has to be tuned essentially. Yeah, yeah, so very, very cool. Well, next week we're going to do another chapter, and then the week after that we're going to do Floyd Sweet's Device, which is another chapter in this most awesome book, Quest for Zero Point Energy by Engineering Principles for Free Energy, Moray King. He does have other books, but this is the one that we're going through right now, and this is the second chapter that I chose that we went through today as well. Does anybody else have any comments or anything before we stop the recording?
Yeah, a lot of the same names keep coming up. And I mean, I was, if
Yep.
you go way back, the first meeting I think I joined because I think a lot of us have been on this path for a while, and you kind of run across some of these same things. But he mentioned Randy Mills' device, the guy who has the hydrino state, because he says the 0 point energy field is what holds the electron from collapsing in the nucleus of a hydrogen atom. I mean, and that's exactly what Randy Mills has proven with the hydrino state. So what you do as you drop each of those levels, and that's where your fine structure concept comes in, because basically he's saying there's almost 137 levels of which that
Hmm.
energy field, the electron, can exist. You're basically just skimming the surface of that huge energy field that's sitting underlying all matter. So he's shown it several times, and of course he's kind of going dark because, like I said a while ago, he was responding to some of my emails, and I've sent nothing but friendly stuff originally. And I said, hey, I'm just looking to get a copy of your books, rather than print it out myself. He's like, yeah, just unpacking the office. But last couple emails, you kind of, and I'm sure he's a very busy man, but you know, you got all the big powers looking at this. I mean, there's not a lot of secrets. I think what's going to happen though is just there's too much information all pointing to the same thing, because you watch the Salvatore Pais videos, him talking, everybody's talking about the exact same stuff, but basically just underlying all matter, and it's pretty much undeniable at this point, is just tremendous energy force, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and that's what this group is actually all about, is subquantum kinetics and how it all relates to the 0 point and whatnot, right? So it's interesting that we're reading through there, it did talk about Paul in the
Yep.
subquantum levels, right? And it does in multiple places in the book as well, too, right? So yeah, very cool. Yeah.
By the
Chip,
way,
do you have any comments?
Yeah, no, I was very curious about the sonoluminescence, the
Mhm.
blue light, which I believe is identical to Cherenkov light, the same shit you see in the reactor core, which is unique. It has to do with unique polarization of the field from charged particles around around some kind of a dielectric medium.
Right.
So you can actually spin water around a quartz crystal like Marcel Vogel did and blew himself across the lab by opening the vortex in the crystal.
Mhm.
But remember the video I showed with the blue front and the warp field forming in front of that UFO going superluminal?
Yeah.
It was blue again.
Yep.
A compression and polarized Cherenkov effect. So all these things are beginning to tie together at superluminal velocities, charged particles, same thing that occurs around any kind of a starship. You polarize that field around it, and then you go superluminal. It's absolutely required to overcome the inertia and the impedance in the quantum vacuum. So a lot of corroboration and cross correlations with this thing. Maury King didn't mention Cherenkov in there, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it is. And by the way, the Giza Plateau, same thing.
Yeah.
Those big spiral tubes sitting on the foundation struts under the plateau, under the pyramid, I think are pretty much identical.
Chip, I think you had contact with Maury King. Is it possible to ask him if he actually physically knew Ken Shoulders personally?
Absolutely.
Because I think he did. I think.
Yeah, no, we could get through his work. I don't know how much you want to do. He's written 4 books.
Yeah,
What I find, and we could get him in this group without a doubt. I think he'd love to attend.
Oh, well, perfect. There you go.
It's a little puzzling because he's done a lot of amalgamation, referencing a whole lot of authors.
Big time.
He doesn't offer a lot of incipient original thought on this stuff necessarily.
Yeah, and also this book is what, from 2001.
Yeah, about 25 years or so. Yes.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah.
But he's an amazing walking library on all of this stuff. And so if you pose a question for him, give him a little time, he'll go back and cross-reference his own writings and his notes and documentation. He'll come up with some things that you can try to chase down. So
very cool.
He's a hell of a nice guy, and he loves Chinese buffet.
Hey guys, I thought you might be interested in this. I can read out a little bit if you like. I asked the ChatGPT the other day in the group on Saturday, does consciousness create matter, or does matter create consciousness, or is matter a form of consciousness? In terms of Bohm, Sheldrake, and Laviolette, also in terms of Qigong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great question. This gets to the heart of deep metaphysical and scientific questions about the nature of reality. Let's look at how the question, does consciousness create matter, or is matter a form of consciousness, relates to the frameworks of David Bohm, Rupert Sheldrake, Paul Laviolette, and Qigong. So in number one, David Bohm, the implicate order and hollow movement. Hollow movement is like a hologram. Bohm proposed that matter and consciousness emerge from a deeper order he called the implicate order. The implicate order is a unified field of potentiality, a hollow movement from which both mind and matter unfold. So matter is not separate from consciousness, nor is it reducible to the other. Instead, they are aspects of the same underlying process. Consciousness and matter are both abstractions from the hollow movements. Hollow movements, a bit like the hologram. Each part contains a whole.
Mm-hmm.
In this view, consciousness doesn't create matter, nor does matter create consciousness. Both arise from a deeper field of order. Number two, Sheldrake, morphic resonance and morphic fields. Sheldrake suggests that morphic fields organize not only biological form, but also habits of behavior, memory, and even mental activity. These fields are non-local and resonate across time and space, suggesting a kind of conscious ordering principle. From his perspective, matter follows habitual patterns embedded in morphic fields. These fields suggest that mind is not confined to the brain and consciousness extends beyond the material.
Definitely.
This implies that matter is shaped by conscious-like fields, and the two are intertwined. Matter is not primary, rather, organizing fields that resemble consciousness are fundamental. So Paul Laviolette, subquantum kinetics and ether physics. In subquantum kinetics, Laviolette proposes a reaction to fusion ether underlies physical reality. It's not inherent, but self-organizing.
Mm-hmm.
Matter and energy, it's not inert, but self-organizing.
Mm-hmm.
Matter, energy, and fields emerge from subquantum fluctuations governed by non-equilibrium systems.
Yeah.
These systems show mind-like properties such as self-organization and the ability to store and transmit information. Laviolette also suggests consciousness could be an intrinsic property of this etheric medium, and not something that arises only in brains. Thus, matter is a denser form of an underlying conscious-like field. So again, his framework, matter is a condensation of or differentiation of consciousness, rather than consciousness being an accidental product of matter. So it talks about Qigong, whoopsie. So in Qigong and the nature of Qi, in traditional Chinese thought, Qi or vital energy animates all things. It's not simply energy in a physical sense, but is infused with inherent intent, awareness, and direction. In Qigong practice, consciousness directs Qi, and Qi affects both the physical body and subtle fields. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you down here. I thought it said something quite interesting about SQK, subquantum kinetics.
Mm-hmm.
It said that in Paul Laviolette's
There you go. Coherent
in
fluctuations.
subquantum kinetics, ether is self-organizing and has feedback loops akin to biological systems. I think it was. Let me just see if I'm not sure if it was here or somewhere else.
Matter arises from coherent fluctuations, which is important.
So it's down here. Then Justin wanted to know about this guy Igor because he's reading his book, and then so if we combine Igor's model with Laviolette's subquantum kinetics, ether physics, we get a layered view. Laviolette, similar ether-based theories propose consciousness is embedded in the subquantum ether, a subtle medium of self-organizing and information-carrying properties. Now, it said
Yeah.
something down, if I can find it quickly. Um, I think it's here. Paul Laviolette subquantum kinetics proposes that the ether is a self-organizing reaction diffusion medium that forms subatomic particles as soliton-like energy structures.
Yeah.
Information-rich waves can carry organized patterning, analogous to memory or thought. A substrate for consciousness can emerge and act. So, in this view, consciousness inhabits and modulates standing waves and vortex-like structures in the ether. So he was saying longitudinal waves, thought transmission, intense, subtle fields of will, standing
Yeah.
wave solitons, persistent memory patterns like morphic fields,
Yeah.
practical harmonics, self-similar templates of perception and self-reflection, toroidal vortices, centers of localized self-awareness and individuated mind. And then just like this bit down here, when I asked it about, it said multi-layered. So this is multi-layered etheric consciousness. So the ether has different frequencies and levels, different layers of frequency. The material brain, like particles like proton, electron, neutron, made up of the etherons, interface for sensory motor control. Then
Yeah.
at a higher vibration, the ether is like an etheric field, energy flows, memory patterns, vital chi. Then at a higher vibration of the ether, astral field, emotions, images, desires, mental field, thought forms, logic, beliefs, causal field. So these are all different sort of like higher vibrations of the ether. Causal
Yeah.
field, archetypes, intent, life plan, higher field, monad, oversoul, akashic memory.
Interesting. Interesting. And do you guys remember when we did the shows about the structures of the atomic structures and how they're all toroids and whatnot? And remember how it said the only difference between particle like matter and energy is the fact that one is closed and one is an open system. And that's really, really important because it's basically these charge clusters or these electron groups that, if you think about it, can actually have information. So absolutely, all of the above is cool and true. Does anybody else have any things to bring up before we shut the recording off? Because we should do that. No, well, maybe Brent, you can shut the recording off,
Okay.
and we'll.
Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye then.
We'll be back again.